Examine the narrative technique employed in Heart of Darkness. Marks: 10 to 12. Answer: Joseph Conrad was greatly influenced by the narrative technique called frame narrative, often used by the medieval poets like Chaucer and Boccaccio. Also known as narrative within narrative, this technique employs two narrators. The first narrator, known as frame narrator, makes the frame by introducing and explaining the events at the outset. Then he hands over the narrative to another, himself being a listener, and finally again comes back in the narrative. Marlow is the core narrator in Heart of Darkness, introduced by an anonymous frame narrator who talks about Marlow's past life and career. Marlow is used as a device, a figure created by Conrad to carry on the narration, to report on events and to critically observe individuals and events. Marlow, the narrator, is highly symbolical. He represents the spirit of adventure and the love of exploration. The frame narrator's introduction gives entry to the central issues that Marlow is going to deal with in the rest of the narrative. Marlow describes the miserable, poor and wretched conditions of the underdeveloped nations. The sight of suffering, pain and gloom makes him think that he has entered an inferno. Through his narration, Marlow has given several examples of the white man's useless exertions, like the aimless firing by a warship, the blasting of a rock that is not required in the process of making a railway track, etc. The emptiness and hollowness of the white people is portrayed by Marlow in the character of manager, brickmaker and the agents who waste their time in nonsense talks. Marlow calls them faithless pilgrims. Conrad excellently uses poetic language to give the clearest view of the physical setting and the effects of outer setting to the inner landscape of Africa. The text is replete with instances of reverberations, and reliance on memory plays an important part in the narrative. He uses the elaborate pattern of voyages, weaving the readers back and forth in time, and the various layers of voyages are subsumed into the narrative framework. The story in Heart of Darkness changes from physical exploration to a mental one. The exploration of the Congo becomes the survey of the dark continent of human mind. The novel depicts a systematic statement of the destruction of the visible surface of life by darkness. But it does so in order to provide a context for the formation of a new aesthetics, as it is here that Conrad makes his choice between Marlow and the anonymous narrator, between dreams and darkness. Although this novella explores Marlow's mission of the River Congo to Stanley Falls, his interest is centered in Kurtz. In Part 2, we are informed that Mr. Kurtz has identified himself with the savages, and he takes active participation in their midnight dances, which always end with unspeakable rites. However, Marlow's admiration for Kurtz is clearly understood, although he has not met Kurtz before. In Part 3, Marlow's own evil instinct arises from sleep and he feels a great sympathy for Kurtz. He says that he too would have become evil if he had stayed there for such a long time. At this point in the novel, Marlow has probed deeply into his subconscious mind and feels the kinship that is established between him and Mr. Kurtz. The last words uttered by Kurtz show that he is horrified at the realization of the evil within himself. Thus, through the technique of frame narrative, the reader gets the opportunity to get acquainted with each of the characters, their strengths, weaknesses and personalities. It turns out to be a unique way of setting up a story, helping to improve a reader's perception and giving him a better understanding of the story. Finished. Please subscribe to the channel for more updates of ready-made notes on English literature. Also, please share this channel to help any student pursue a degree in English literature. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please do not forget to like and comment.